Welcome to our speaker series. We have some new faces amongst us, so for those of you who I don't know well, my name is Ray Comiskey. I'm president here at Jefferson College, and we're very pleased that you're here with us today. And we are going to turn our thoughts to spring. That's the power of positive thinking, right? We're going to get past all this blah winter weather and enjoy some sunshine and spend our day talking a little bit about preparing for plants for this year. Our speaker today is Bunny Gronborg, who has a long time with the college. She made sure to point out to me that she and her husband both have ties here. Their son's gone here, so they really are big supporters of the college, so she's just thrilled to be able to join us here today. She's a lifetime gardener, and she's an advanced Missouri Master Gardener in Jefferson County. She and her husband have lived on acreages in Iowa and Missouri cities of Peculiar and House Springs. Incidentally, the motto of Peculiar is where the odds are with you.
That's right.
In the 1980s, while living in Iowa, Bunny operated Circle G Organic Gardens, which puts her, if you will, at that time ahead of her time in terms of thinking about everything organic. In retirement, they live in a standard subdivision in Festus with a standard subdivision yard. However, in Bunny's case, the yard is a garden full of raised beds with food gardens and a blueberry patch they call Blueberry Hill. Last summer, their garden was on the Jefferson County Garden Tour, and their oldest son's wedding took place in the backyard, which features a themed gardens with walking paths and seating areas, as well as small Zen pond with goldfish. I'm really glad my wife's not here today. Every summer, she has around 60 containers full of food, annuals, and native plants on the deck and throughout her gardens. Container gardening has thus become her specialty. She has conducted classes as far away as Florida, and she regularly instructs the container garden class for the new Jefferson County Budding Master Gardeners program. Today, she'll present a shortened form of her class called When You Only Have a Pot, and her goal is to help people be successful with their attempts from the get-go, whether it's one pot or 60. The focus will be on the bare essentials needed for success, and will include some photos. So Bunny's looking forward to an invigorating question and answer session afterwards. So let's get started by welcoming Bunny Gronborg, Master Gardener.
Thank you very much. The first thing I'm going to do is put a plug in. You received a handout for the Jefferson County Master Gardeners classes that begin in April. This is not too far away, and go through July, and it gives you all of the particulars about that. When I retired from public library service, the first thing I did was sign up for a Master Gardeners class, because I had been a gardener all of my life, and I have to tell you that Master Gardeners don't know all the answers. We just don't. And although sometimes when you go to the botanical garden, those people act like it, little bit snooty. I love the botanical gardens. I'm a member. I'm just teasing. But we're very informal at the Jefferson County Master Gardeners group. We make good friends there, don't we, Carmelita? Yes. And we have so much fun. But what it does, the Master Gardener certification, is for people who are passionate about gardening and passionate learners, and that's what we are, passionate learners. We're constantly learning. Whenever I present this class or a talk, I actually learn from people that are in the classes because they will give me a suggestion or something that I've never heard before. And so hopefully I'll help you out a little bit today. Hopefully you're a little bit entertained, but do consider this. You can take one class through the college, or you can take the whole course. If you see a class on there and you just want to take that one, you call the phone number on there and you sign up for that one class and come for that one class, the one thing that you're interested in, and that's fine too. Or you can get your certification, and I wanted mine because I enjoy public speaking and I really wanted some credentials. I really wanted to be able to say to people, yes, I have studied. Yes, there are some things that I don't know, but believe me, there are a bunch of things I don't know. And if you, in the question and answer session, you're welcome to ask me anything pertaining to gardening, except for turf grass, which I'm not interested in. And when we had our turf grass, and I'm talking about your lawn, when we had that class in the Master Gardeners class, I doodled, because I'm not one to use a lot of chemicals and things like that. I keep our little patch of turf grass in our yard mowed, and to me, that's good. I don't even have a power mower. I have one of the old-fashioned push mowers, you know, the updated ones. So that's where I am with that. And if you want any information on turf grass, hey, you can go to one of those big box stores, and they're pushing all the products. They know what to tell you. Or the other thing that you can do, and I'll show you this, is that you have a great reference in the Extension Department for the University of Missouri. And you can go to their website and download all of these instructional pamphlets on different things. This one happens to be one called Flowering Annuals. And I brought that along because most of that is what you put into containers. So, but you can go, and they have many handouts on turf grass and growing trees and landscaping. You can also go over to to Hillsborough at the University Extension Department, and they keep a lot of these in there so that you can actually see those. So there's that. So with that, we'll get started. This is a long class that I give, and I have shortened it greatly, so a lot of these I'm just going to be whizzing through, if you don't mind. And I have to kind of check my notes that I made ahead of time to see what I wanted to stress for you. Except for about 2 pictures in this presentation, all of the photographs are mine. I wish I was able to bring the ones that I took this summer at my son's wedding, but Windows 8 defied me. And I was at the library in Festus because I have a Mac at home, and I just couldn't transfer the pictures over. So I'm going to figure it out, though, before I have to actually teach this class. So to move forward, when you only have a pot, and I don't care if you want to plant 1 container or if you want to plant, like me, over 60, I want you to be, I know, isn't it crazy? I want you to be successful, and so I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that. Okay, is it this way? There you go. Why would you want to plant a garden in a container? Well, maybe you have limited space like I do now. I'm no longer on an acreage. We're in a subdivision. And maybe you have too much sun or too much shade in the areas that you want to have some flowers or something growing, and having a container that you can move around is an ideal situation. Maybe you have the soil from hell in your yard, which is commonly referred to as Jefferson County clay. And so what we do for that is raised beds, folks, in containers. Maybe you have physical challenges like my husband does, and gardening with containers is a little bit easier. You know, you can actually sit in a wheelchair and things like that and do your container gardening. Maybe your front porch is naked and embarrassed because you haven't put anything on there. And maybe you want to start small. Or maybe like me, you're just addicted to pots. It could be worse. But even in my poor days, I always made sure to squirrel away some money for flowers and food and containers. I'm going to show you how to do it. A patio or your deck or your porch can become your private garden room. This is ours. This picture was taken before my husband put railings around the containers that I have lined along the railings. Can you see the obvious problem when the wind came up? Yeah, he put the guards on there pretty quick. So some of the pictures show them beforehand. And we have a big deck, and it goes down to a low deck underneath. I'm fortunate to have amongst my 4 sons, we have 4 married sons and 8 grandchildren, and 2 of the sons are master carpenters. So they help out a lot of times with these projects of ours. And so this is what happens when you're addicted to containers. And we don't go take a lot of vacations or do things like that. So we have made our yard our oasis. That's my husband right there. He's taking care of vines. Let's see, backwards. I wanted to go backwards. There we go. I'll figure this out. What can you plant in a container or a pot? You can use annual flowers. Now keep in mind, annuals are those things you have to plant every single year. They don't come back. You can use annual flowers and grasses, annual vine seeds. You can use annual or perennial vines. Perennials are the things that come back every year, hopefully. We're a little worried about this winter, aren't we? Cannas, caladiums, gladiolas, those are your tubers and bulbs. You can actually put those in the containers. Don't make the mistake I did as a young gardener and put a canna tuber in a container like a clay container that will just literally, you know, they grow and they spread and the container, it will burst the container. So those have to go in a plastic kind of thing. Perennial flowers such as roses, yes, you can do it. Alberta spruce, things like that can go in larger containers. Small trees and shrubs, especially conifers, work well in there. Missouri native plants. The Master Gardeners talk a lot about Missouri natives. And if you want bees, want to do something about the bee problem that we're having now and have bees in your yard, if you're not allergic to bees, of course, one of the things you want to have in your yard or your containers are Missouri native plants. And you can go to a website called grownative.org and you will find a whole list for sale there. Or come to the Crest Farm plant sale the first weekend in May, and there are a lot of native plants for sale there. The other thing that bees are attracted to, some of the things that would surprise you, but they love food blossoms, herbs in particular, the blossoms of thyme and other herbs like that. They're crazy about it, so keep that in mind. Vegetables and herbs. Those two conifers right there, that's a winter scene of my yard. I started off in insulated containers that were probably about that big in there, and I transferred them into the yard. You can grow food in there. This is our side yard. That's our neighbor's house right there on the right-hand side. And so our garden, she's also a gardener, and my food garden is right along there. And you see I have a tomato plant in a large, ugly container there, and it's just happy as a clam. Choosing the right pots. Your choices are limitless. You go into the stores now, you can see containers made out of terracotta clay, made out of very expensive materials, you know, the glass and so forth, wood, concrete. What you're looking for, though, is porosity, which means can that container kind of breathe like the terracotta, you know, pots that you see? And drainage. Your containers always have to have drainage. You cannot let water accumulate in the bottom of a container. You just can't. That's instant death for the plants in there. Porosity. Some materials allow moisture and air to penetrate more readily. Porous pots draw away excess water and prevent waterlogged plants. Those would be unglazed terracotta, wood, and coconut mats. Coconut mats are those things you put in hanging baskets, by the way. That's what those are. Non-porous pots hold soil moisture and help reduce watering. That would be your glazed terracotta, plastic, fiberglass, metal. And watering is becoming an issue in our summers now. It really, really is. We have 3 rain barrels in our yard and garden, and they work fine as long as it rains. So watering is a big concern when you're dealing with containers because they have to be watered regularly. Drainage is extremely important. For healthy roots, plants, the soil must drain properly and have enough space for air. The causes of poor drainage are your soil is too dense, or the lack of drain holes or plugged drain holes, and you can double pot and use a container without a drain hole. If you're going to, I have a big container I'm going to show you here, that one, isn't that cute? It came from that place up near the Botanical Gardens, Gringo Jones. One of my sons got that for me. Well, it didn't have a drain hole in the bottom, but you can see I have another pot inside of it that I put various plants every year in. And so that pot inside has drainage, and there's plenty of room for it to drain in there. So you can do little tricks like that. Improvised containers can be almost anything. What I don't want to ever see you do is to do something, this was in the paper a couple of years ago, and 12 ideas for greening your garden. Well, that's really nice. There's a plant potted in a little metal can. Don't ever do that. You could give somebody a nice gift in a little metal can, but don't expect that to stay in there all summer long. I have one metal container, and it is an old copper boiler, and that's what those plants are sitting in. That's big enough to handle it, but other things are not. Don't be planting inside metal. The heat just bakes those roots. So in various years, I've put different plants in that copper boiler, and that's what I call an improvised container. That's another one. That wasn't mine. That's an old wash tub. This is something I took off the internet. Whatever you choose, make sure it has proper drainage there. I don't care if it's an old shoe or, in that case, a wheelbarrow. It just needs to be able to drain. And you match your container to what you want to grow. Obviously, if you want to grow something like, that is a weeping lantana, and if you want to grow something like that, you need to put it in a hanging basket and give it plenty of room to drape down. I am not going to advertise for, or I try not to, for any place that I get plants. I get plants at a lot of different places, but the only place I found a weeping lantana is at Bears up there. And for good annuals, a lot of the better annuals that you want to use, you have to go to a nursery and get those, and you're going to pay about $3.50 to $4 for each plant. But that's one plant in there. Look what it looks like at the end of the summer. Container gardening tip: when you plant a puppy, make sure the container can comfortably accommodate a full-grown dog. And I'm serious about that. You need to be using containers that are much bigger than what you think. I had a neighbor that I repeatedly told to get herself some bigger containers because she was using teeny tiny little things and planting one geranium in them. And of course, a month later, they were dead because the container was root bound and overheated and didn't get enough food, and you would have to stand out there literally continuously in water all day long. Here is an example of another hanging basket with an annual called, oh, I love this, pretty much Picasso. In there, it's one of those beautiful new types of petunias, a supertunia, that you don't have to, if you don't want to, you don't have to pluck it back. Here's the dirty secret. Your soil health equals your plant health. Now, quite frankly, this is true of your yard and garden. You know, your yard, like I said, in order to battle this clay that we have in Jefferson County, it has to be amended with a lot of compost and leaf mold and things like that. A good solution is raised beds. That's how we combat it at our house. And how a lot of people deal with it. But when you're gardening in containers, do not go outside and get a shovel full of dirt and put it into a container. I have seen people do that. It's going to turn into concrete. You need to get yourself a good potting mix, and I'll show you what it is. Mostly, it's not dirt. But you got to consider something. Those plants are going to be in the container all summer long, aren't they? They are completely dependent on the food and the potting medium that you have them in. This is how you get plants that look like that. So, plants in containers, as I said, are 100% dependent on the growing mix in which they are planted. Never use garden soil. Experiment with various potting soils and soilless mediums. Organic, if you want to do it completely organic, say for if you're putting food in a pot, you can have 90% organic compost and 10% organic topsoil. For cactus and succulents, 1 part of the cheapest topsoil you can find to 3 parts of sand. Easy. Dirty hands carry rewards. I don't know a master gardener that has long fingernails. I sure don't, not even during the wintertime. And I don't worry about it. I never get a manicure. I don't care. This is what I care about. Potting up. I have the only potting bench with granite tops because, like I said, I have a couple sons who work in rehab and they're carpenters, and they brought me home a couple pieces of granite that was being thrown in a dumpster, and we're like, oh boy, here we go. The only thing you can put on top of those granite that granite in the hot summer day is an egg or cactus. That's what it looks like during the winter. That's my little assistant there, my granddaughter, who's now 14 years old, going on 27. And that's us. I have taught all my kids and grandkids about planting. When you're planting your pots, and usually I do a potting demonstration, but when you're planting them, you cover the drainage holes of the container with window screen, or you can take some old pot shards, you know, pieces of broken pots. It might be curved. You don't want to put it flat on that hole to prevent the mix from escaping. What you don't want to do, particularly like in an area where we have a deck there, is have dirt draining all over that. You fill the container with 3/4 of the mix. In large parts, you can replace what's in the bottom with stuff. When you have a large container, and I have a lot of them, it takes a lot of potting mix. I have to tell you, for all of the containers that I plant, it takes me about 6 of those big, tall bags of, you can use Miracle-Gro potting mix, you can use any brand that's sold at any store, as long as it's good, that it has a long-term, they'll generally say will fertilize up to 4 months, and so forth, those kinds of things. What I put in the bottom, however, the roots of most of the annuals aren't going to reach all the way to the bottom. So you can use plastic containers and scrunch it all up. You can use packing peanuts that aren't made out of soy, you know, the kind that are, I'm talking about styrofoam ones that won't break down. You can use tin cans that you have crushed. And what I do is I save some old potting mix from the year before, and they're in contractor bags out in my backyard, all rolled up right now, waiting to go in the bottom of large containers. That way I've saved myself some money. But you don't need to fill the whole container full of that good, expensive potting mix, just the part where you know the roots are going to go down to.
What about usually how deep is that?
It depends on the plants that you're putting in there, but most annuals, the roots are going to go down about that far. Yeah. You know, if you put a perennial in there now, however, you're going to fill the whole container with very good stuff.
What about rocks at the bottom?
You can put rocks in the bottom. You can. Just don't cover up, make sure that drainage hole is not covered up, because you'll end up with a sewer in the bottom of your pot. You really will. It's a terrible odor. And you'll make your plants sick. So you can put stuff in there. Remove the plant from the container and you squeeze it out. Don't just pull it out of those little, you know, those little cell packs I'm talking about. Don't pull it out, because you're just going to rip it out by the roots and it's gone. And gently tease the roots, but don't laugh at them. Tease the roots means you kind of move them apart with your fingers and make sure those roots are restarted again and get a lot of room to go, especially if they're root bound in there. You place the plants into the mix, hold them in place, add a little bit more mix, but not to the brim. Plants except tomatoes should be at the same depth they were before you planted them. Tomatoes, however, are different. And this goes true if you plant them in your garden too. You want to bury most of that tomato plant, because that's going to send out roots and feed that plant from, you know, most of the way up the plant. In a container, you can take a tomato and actually lay down the bottom of it, and then, you know, if it's too tall, you just kind of lay it down and then have it come up like that. I plant a lot of container tomatoes. Be ruthless with those blooms. You have to pinch them back from annuals. So say you've got a petunia and it's blooming and it just looks beautiful. You're going to whack its head off and leave it about that big. 2 weeks from now, the blooms will start, the plants will be full. Pruning back like that when you're planting for most annuals is one of the secrets to getting nice, full, and blooming plants. But they've been considerate. They've been in a greenhouse for a while, and they've been working. So take those flowers off. You're going to plant them. They get new fertilizer, and they're off and running. For about 2 weeks, you have no blooms in those pots, but that's okay. Just be patient. You water it gently until the water runs through the drainage holes, and you place the pot on feet or bricks if necessary to allow drainage. You begin with those kinds of things that are in your flats. You know, you go and buy all of these small plants and your accent plants. That's how you start. And when you plant them, you're dense, but not dumb. In other words, when people see my containers when I first plant them, They're like, you have too many plants in there. How do you think they get to grow so big? They're crowded in there, and I feed them all summer long, so that's okay. But they're very intensely planted in there. Now, this kind of defies the rule right here. That's one of those supertunias, Calibrachoa. You don't prune that back. There are some things that you don't, so it's not, you can break that rule. But salvias, I take the tops off for the most part, even that blue and black salvia there. And Dusty Miller, I'll cut back a little bit. So that's a lot of plants in there. And here's a planter with impatiens in it. In a pot about that big, there are at least a dozen plants in there. And that's the way they start. And that's the way they end. Keep your plants happy. How do you do that? Especially when you plant intensively. That is one plant in a hanging basket, one, and it's called osteospermum or blue-eyed daisy. They've become very popular in recent years, and now you can get them in a lot of colors. How do you keep them looking like this? How do you keep them blooming all summer long? You have to water them, particularly when we get in our drought times. It's almost every day. You have to be willing to do that. You feed them. Depending on how much you water them, if you have to water a lot, you have to feed a lot. Because even in a planting medium that says that you're going to be able to feed your plants just with that potting mix for 4 months, when you've watered for about 2 months, it's out of food in that potting mix. It drains through. So then you have to refertilize. And for food, when I'm planting herbs, what do I use to fertilize? I use this nice Alaska fish fertilizer. What is it? Ground up stinky fish. And you drop about a tablespoon of that in a gallon of water, and my food crops get that. For flowers and things like that, you can water with that water-soluble Miracle-Gro. And when I put old potting mix, when I mix it in with new potting mix, I use this, which is not an organic fertilizer. It's called Osmocote. This is also what I feed a lot of my perennials with early in the spring, along with compost. So those two things are pretty valuable. But for my containers, a lot of the time, if it's just the flowers, I use water-soluble Miracle-Gro or K-Gro. It's the same thing, just a little bit cheaper. If you want to stay strictly organic, then you stay with something like the fish emulsion or kelp or something like that. Don't depend on spraying your containers with Miracle-Gro, by the way. You know how you see it on TV? Don't do that. You have to actually water it in when you're doing a container. Don't depend on rain to water containers, because even if you have a pouring down rain, it bounces off the flowers, and most of the time it doesn't saturate the pot or get it wet enough. Fertility declines with watering, so you have to feed frequently. You change the planter position if necessary. If you want to see that planter, if you've got it someplace in your yard where you want it to look good from all angles, a lot of times you'll have to rotate it every week, turn it and stuff so it's getting the proper amount of light all the way around. And you pinch or cut off spent blooms to encourage more flower production. That's called deadheading. And you watch for pests. I group plants to conserve water. That's another way that you conserve water, so those containers are close together. Oh, that was interesting. 2 summers ago, I went to Springfield to do this talk, and it was 104 degrees out. I brought in the containers into my dining room and down in the basement for the couple days that I was gone, just to protect them because I couldn't be there to water them. Don't let me go hungry. Those are 2 of my grandbabies. Yep, another one. A fertilizing plan. I told you how the water flushes the fertilizer through the potting mix. And so how often do you fertilize? Maybe every other time you water. And that would be just a little bit. But the way I do it is maybe once every 2 weeks, full strength Miracle-Gro, depending on the temperature. Don't use granular fertilizer or spray liquid fertilizer onto containers. Yummy fish emulsion comes from that. There's a recipe for liquid or organic food. I just use the fish emulsion, but you could add liquid kelp, blood meal, especially good for roses and vegetables and tropical hibiscus. And then there's rotating plants. Oh, that's a great annual now, if you've ever seen it, called Persian Shield. It's a great one. It turns into this huge shrubby thing. Too bad it's an annual and not a perennial. Some containers you aren't going to rotate because they're too big, or depending on where they're at. Like a window box, you're not going to rotate that. I use this a lot for the wedding. I wish I could have brought those pictures. That's Silver Falls dichondra. It's a beautiful annual vine, and I had it hanging down from a lot of the deck plantings because they were married on the low deck, and it was just a beautiful effect. Off with your head, this is deadheading. Salvia is notorious for getting up and looking like that. That's a purple salvia. And then when it starts looking bad, cut those off and refertilize. 2 weeks later, you're going to have blooms again. Same with regular petunias. Geraniums, too. Deadheading is an evil necessity if you want to keep your plants looking good. And take your coffee out there in the morning and just walk around and start snipping off your heads. Here's another beautiful annual to plant, and this is coleus. They have this little bloom right there. You want to keep those pinched off until fall. Otherwise, the plant will start to decline. That's the plant's flower. Once the plant flowers, it's saying, oh, I'm reproducing now. I don't need to live anymore. So you want to keep those pinched off. I love coleus. Watch out for pests. And that includes people wandering into your yard, throwing cigarettes in there. Animal pests, like those. Chipmunks are cute, but they can tear apart your containers. Who knows what that is?
Beetles.
Japanese beetles. I have learned how to pick them up, and that's me, and I squish them between my 2 fingers. I hate them so much. And storms. Storms can really do a job on your containers, so kind of protect them. The heat, that's one of the mailboxes in our neighborhood during some of that intense heat. And children, grandchildren, they tend to pull things out. More importantly, don't stress over how you're going to do design and what am I going to plant. Plant what you like. If you see something you like, plant it. If you're planting food, only plant what you eat. Don't plant something because somebody else has it. Plant what you like and don't stress over the design. It's pretty simple. You know that guy that used to be on TV, Paul James, the Gardening by the Yard? He had a rule. It should be thrillin', fillin', and spillin'. Something tall, some plants that fill in, and spilling the plants that spill out over the pot. And you can arrange your multiple containers to give that same effect next to one another. That's what I did right there. I have something tall, that Persian Shield, things that are actually considered fillers like petunias, and then there's basil in front of that little deck fountain there. So you can arrange your plants like that. Here are some more tips. Match the pot to what you want to plant and choose a pot bigger than you think you will need. No teeny tiny pots, don't do that. Avoid small metal containers. Group your plants with similar light needs together in the same container. Don't put shade plants in with sun plants. Group your plants with similar water needs in the same container. Don't put a cactus or an aloe plant in with something that needs a lot of water. And repot purchased ready plants. What do I mean by that? So you go into a gardening center and you see those hanging baskets hanging there, take those home and repot them. They have been in they're hanging there in those nice white pots, maybe for $5.99, and you take them home. A couple weeks later, all of a sudden they're not blooming. Take those home and put them into a hanging basket, prune them back, and then you're going to have your display all over again and treat them like you would your own potted container, all right? Because they've been in a greenhouse for a long time and they're out of food. They're plumb out of it by the time you see it in the stores. Now, if you're going to take those home and you have, say, a wedding in your yard or a party or something, have it for that, but then repot them right afterwards, right? Because you spent money on it. Plant what you like and try new stuff. Don't be afraid to do that. look at some of the good annuals that are in the stores and try them out. That one there on the right is called Pentas. That's a bee. The bees love that flower right there. And they love all salvias too. And you have fun with it and take pictures if you want. I go back and look at things that I have planted in previous years and remind myself. That's a rock garden we have in our front yard, and that's when it was brand new and the plants were brand new, and I would hide containers in there. Like that's a container of sun coleus right out there in the hot sun. There are coleus that will grow in the hot sun, and they're beautiful. They really are. So you can tuck your containers in with like your shrubs, your perennial shrubs and things like that, and hide them in various places. That was another sun coleus. There is a pot of impatiens hiding in one of the back gardens under a purple beautyberry and just tucked in there. And I have containers around our pond. That's papyrus, by the way, Egyptian papyrus. You can get it now pretty cheap, and it is an annual, although I have figured out how to overwinter mine. And you can also put them in your vegetable garden. I have a hanging basket there, and I plant flowers in the vegetable garden too. Oh, when you have containers, you have people like that hanging around all summer long. They visit. Preparing for winter time. Oh my gosh, hasn't this been a long winter? We're so happy it's almost to an end. You want to take your large permanent planters containing winter hardy plants such as conifers. They need little protection as long as your drainage is good. Your annuals such as geraniums, begonias, and coleus can be brought inside, or you can take cuttings. And before the ground freezes, you water those hardy container plants. And when temperatures are above freezing during the winter, well, we haven't had that, you water them again and mulch them. Containers made from plastic, clay, metal need to have the soil removed and cleaned. You just brush them out with a wire brush. And then you put them in storage. Wooden containers should never have the soil removed, however, because the wood will be damaged and shrink if you take it out. That's what it looks like when you are cleaning your pots. And then during the winter sometimes I'll use silk flowers. Then take pictures of your containers, because sometimes during the winter I have pictures of them in my house. It helps you remember the beauty of a summer day when we are all nice and warm and we're looking forward to it. So with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions. That's a view from the top deck looking down at the garden. Who wants to ask questions in the few minutes we have? Yes?
How much sun a day does most plants need?
Food plants need at least 6 hours of good sun. You can't get by with much less than that. Although there are some herbs that will just be happy as a clam with less than that. But food plants need more. Now, your annual plants, and if you are unsure how much sun they need, the sun-loving plants tell you on the back. When you buy a plant and you see these sticks in them, and I save all of mine, by the way. I wash them and save them. It tells you on the back whether they're sun-loving, shade-loving. And if you have a hard time determining what a sun coleus is, and a shade coleus, it actually says on the back, a sun coleus says sun to shade, and a shade coleus says shade. So that's how you tell. But your sun-loving flowering plants, the more sun you give them, the more they like. There are some plants, however, that like to have, on the hot summer days that we have, like to have a little shade in the back. So my deck is in the full sun, probably 5 hours a day, but in the afternoon, when the sun moves to the other side of the house, it's in the shade back there, and they really appreciate that. So it's hard on them.
How do you keep your squirrels away from your tomatoes?
Are there any Jefferson County police in here? You have to understand, we raised our kids on acreages and farms, and so we have you're not supposed to shoot in the city limits of Festus, but my husband's a pretty good shot with a BB gun. And We have, our backyard has a privacy fence. I have every possible hole in the bottom of that so rabbits can't get in there. We had a female come in and have babies there one year. We actually managed to trap all of them. We have a live trap. We have managed to trap a few squirrels too. But if you get a heavy population that moves in, because we're surrounded by forest where we're at, I mean, whatever. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I had a question about geraniums, taking them out of the garage in the spring, and knockout roses, how to prune them.
Knockout roses, this year I have to tell you, my favorite knockout roses are the yellow ones. I have 4 of them, and the reason I love they're called sunny knockouts. The reason I love them is because they have the odor of an old damask rose, whereas your regular red and pink knockouts don't have a rose smell to them. Now, this year, however, those yellow knockouts, the one in my backyard that's more protected, and the one on the south side looks pretty good. The ones out front that are on the west side of the house, I'm a little concerned about. I'm probably, you know, when the way you prune a rose, you wait until you start seeing new growth, and you can see the green where the green is on the, you know, on the roses. You actually have to prune off the part that's died, and I think we're going to have a lot of rose damage this year. I really do. I noticed my Don Juan climbing rose is going to have to be cut way back. But hey, that's fine. It'll come out of it. Just prune it back where you think it needs to be pruned. And you know, knockouts are just kind of brambly. You actually don't have to take as great a care with those in the way you prune them as you do your standard hybrid tea. You can just kind of whack away at them and they come out looking great. But this is true for all your perennials, especially if you're pruning them. Make sure that you give them in the spring, scratch in a good amount of compost. It's gold. It's golden fertilizer, and compost and Osmocote. 2 things on your shrubs. And people have rose recipes that they use, rosarians and stuff. Ask them what they use too. But this spring they're going to need a lot of fertilizer. They've had a hard winter.
And the geraniums, I usually put them in the garage, and I just don't have a real good, when I bring them out.
I have never,
They live, but
they live, but they're never quite what they were, so I don't do it.
Okay.
So
I've been using coffee filters in the bottom of some of my pots.
that works. That's a good thing to use. Thank you for mentioning that.
Coffee filter over the hole so that. I want to try this year to put, I have my poinsettia that's still blooming and beautiful inside. I can put it outside in a container, correct?
Yes.
In the summertime?
Yes.
And then when do I put it in the dark? I have to put it in a dark place for like a month or so?
You know what? Call the botanical garden. You know the answer line for the botanical garden up there? Those people are really good about knowing what to do with poinsettias. I have tried several times to do that and haven't had any luck getting it to do that. I'm going to go to the orchid show with some friends next week up there, you know, and that's another plant that's a little too finicky for me. They're just a little too finicky. But they're gorgeous, aren't they? And poinsettias are gorgeous.
What do you think about the upside down tomato plants?
I don't like them.
Me either.
It's rude to do that to a plant. How would you like it if somebody hung you up by your feet? Would you expect to be at your optimum performance level? They're hard to keep watered. They are. Anybody else? Anybody else? Well, I hope you learned something today. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to ask me. Thank you.